Okay, right. So let's start with the sketch. I'm going to identify two main elements on the painting. The sky and everything below the horizon. So we've got some mountains, we've got a bit of water, we've got a bit of sand, we've got a bit of a shadow. But if we look at everything together, where that line is going to be, it looks like in the middle, but it's actually tiny bit higher than in the center. Okay, so let's just make the bottom part of all of those elements a little bit higher in the center. So if this is my halfway through the page roughly space, so if I'll put it tiny bit higher, so that's going to be my rough line. Now, quite often in watercolor, when we're doing a horizon, we just sketch it out. I'm going to use quite a tiny bit darker line so you can see it on the screen. However, for watercolors, try to sketch with quite pale pencil lines. Or if you do have dark lines, rub them out before you start painting so they're not disrupting your work. Also, if we have a very defined, straight, perfect horizon line, we can put a piece of tape. But today we've got quite a soft, mingly line which goes a tiny bit up and down, so we don't need to do that one. Right, then we have the mountains themselves. So it's a small width going slightly up. I might gently exaggerate them at the top here, and then it's going quite nice and narrow there. Okay, so it's where that peak is. Is it in the center or is it a little bit more towards the left? Yeah, so you can decide how you want to put it. Maybe even two peaks here, gently. I'll make it a tiny bit more lower here. Again, that's not principally too big difference. It's a rough plan there. Okay. And then we have a few diagonal lines to identify our shore. Again, how big, if I look at the left-hand side, the bottom part down from the horizon line, how much space is going to take for our sea, and how much is going to be the rest of that water, that blue water. So for the sea, or for how much of the white space for the shore is going to be there. So roughly somewhere here. So it's easy for me to divide it about somewhere here, and then go for that all the way line diagonal across. Again, I can mingle that line and make it less perfect straight when I'll start painting. I can do that with my brush, but for now, that's the direction of my beach. And again, roughly where the shadows are going to be. It's easier for me to do it with a brush, but for now, I'll roughly identify with some strokes, because I don't want to put a perfect line. There isn't a perfect diagonal line, but it roughly goes diagonally where the shadow is going to be. Okay, roughly somewhere here. I can also see a green tree, a small green tree close to the horizon. Well, it's on the shore, but it's right on the right hand side here. So it's a pale green tree here. And then we've got these silhouettes of the branches. Now, if I were to start sketching all the branches here with a pencil and then going around them with the paint, that's going to be quite a difficult task for me personally. So what I tend to do, I tend to put the direction of some of the branches, okay, because that might be sometimes tricky doing with a brush. So with a pencil, I can do it and adjust it. So for example, actually this branch could go somewhere further than halfway through. But if you end up with slightly different branches, it doesn't matter. So the branches could be rubbed out and redrawn if we wanted to. So if I'll put a couple of branches, maybe one here, maybe a couple this side. But I'm going to leave out all the dark silhouettes of the leaves. I'll do it with my brush. I'll be more freer if I'm not going to copy them identical to what they are on our sample piece where we're working from. It doesn't matter. But I'll work with my brush much more free, and we'll experiment, we'll practice doing that together as well. These lines again will disappear by the time we'll start painting our sky, so they're just in a rough placement at the moment, okay? And our sketch is really finished for the watercolor. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to use my spare paper to get some colors mixed. So what I'll do now, I'll put my piece of my sample we'll be looking at close, and I'll use a little bit cheaper watercolor paper because I'm just going to be using the samples color mixing and samples of strokes. Sometimes it's good to use the same watercolor paper. Yeah, it's a little bit more expensive, and to use it as a scrap paper, but then you might have an extra bonus of experimenting exactly with the texture and the absorbance of the paper you're actually going to be painting. But for practicing, just mixing some of the colors and some basic techniques, what we're doing, a drawing paper would be fine as well. Okay. So let's do it this way. I usually start with watercolor painting with the sky. First of all, because it's the highest point on the painting. So anything, I'm not going to smudge into it. So I'm working from the top of the paper down, okay? So we've got some gorgeous blues in here. So the blues are much stronger at the top and a little bit paler at the bottom. So let's just check what blues we have and which ones we're going to use, how we can maybe dilute them. So I'm going to go and try some of my blues. Let's have a look what that is. I think that looks like an ultramarine. Okay, so if I'll put it here and see what it looks like. I'm using a flat medium brush, synthetic brush, just to see what my colors are like. I've got some azure or sky blue. It's kind of a little bit more close to turquoise in comparison to the ultramarine. Okay, that's looking much more exciting type of blue. And I think I'm going to use emerald green, so I can mix it with my previous two blues. Okay. So ultramarine, azure, and emerald green. And let's mix those three. Depends how much green we'll add to it. Let's have now azure mixed with ultramarine. Okay, I've used less emerald green with azure. So that looks quite nice, intensive. I've used quite a lot of emerald green here. Okay, so I'm just trying to see if I can match some of the colors here. Maybe just a hint of paler turquoisey colors might come in here. I would like to use those. Okay, but most importantly, I probably would want to have some darker colors and some lighter colors. I think my azure or sky blue different title for it. If I'll use it quite strong with little water, or if I'll start diluting it, that might be a nice color for me today. Okay, this looks a nice strong color. And if I dilute it, I think that looks like some of my paler clouds at the bottom. While I'm looking at my sky, I can see similar colors on the water and here part of it in the shadow. So I'm looking at similar blues. Let me see if I can make my ultramarine very dark. Would it be a type of color I'd want to use, or maybe it will be too strong color, too more into the violetty side? Okay, that's quite nice, but I think it looks more to more purpley. So maybe part of it could be used somewhere in the top here in the sky, but maybe for the water, I'll still go for extra green with my ultramarine. So this is how I would be identifying my colors if I'm looking at, so that's more or less, by the time I add ultramarine with emerald green, I'm getting azure. So if you don't have it, that's what you've got, okay? This might be just tiny bit more greener here, but any of those combinations of colors will be wonderful. So this is how I identify my colors when I'm painting outdoors, or if I'm looking at my photographs or my sketches, or if I'm trying to look at the work of another artist and trying to get some inspiration. I put a few colors together, make them light and darker. I mix some of the close colors together before I get going any further. Okay. So that's probably going to be my sky, my water, and part of the shadows. So just mixing some colors, just experimenting what's going to happen to them when we put them on paper, on the practice paper. And then later on, we'll start adding other colors, but we're not going to go too far. We're going to pick up maybe some of those dark colors because they're easy. And then we'll start painting our sky. We'll come back to, no, maybe we'll come back to the black ones, the dark tones afterwards. Actually, we've done our sky colors. Let's come back to our main painting. Let's get started with that. So I'm going to remove this one now. And now I have my sketch ready with my pencil drawing, which we already done. And I'm going to tape it all the way around the perimeter with the masking tape. Usually I put something to secure it first so it's not moving. I don't want to cover too much space. Just make sure there is no air bubbles underneath of it. I usually use a good 5-6 millimeters to cover the paper. The rest goes on the board. That's a bit wobbly. Too short. Okay, let's make another one longer. Right, so now I identified my colors. So I'll go for mainly azure. Maybe at some point might dip my brush in an ultramarine or a bit of emerald green, but mainly stick to azure and make it light and darker. So I'm going to use my big mop brush, squirrel brush, or alternatively you can go for flat, larger brush, which will contain more water. And I'm going to be very brave and strong. I'm going to put a couple of strokes on my scrap piece of paper, just very, very quickly, so I can see that I've loaded my brush well. I'll just put this image a little bit more close for the moment, and then I'll probably remove it from here. Okay, so I can just see the intensity of the colors in here. Okay, so strong azure. So my colors are going to be mixed on the palette. So if I dip into ultramarine, or if I dip a little bit more into the emerald green, it's absolutely fine. That's why we are mixing them together. Okay, so I'm probably gonna go for that type of intensity of my color, and then we'll go and add a little bit of paler colors on the bottom. Okay, so I'm gonna start from something paler, sorry, from something darker at the top, and then work into some paler, soften some of the paler colors as well. Okay, so that will be something I'll be doing in there, but maybe much more small. I'm just testing the colors here. Okay, okay, so this is how I'm gonna actually do it. Nice and intensive color, more or less straight away. I'm going to do the whole sky in one go. Big challenge on a first lesson. Very, very quick. A lot of water. So I keep mixing my pigments and getting it all into my bristles. So I'm ignoring the dark branches completely. And I'm going to go for very dark, big strokes where the blue is going to go. And something nice and dark somewhere here. And very quickly, I'm going to wash my brush, gently wash my brush, so I'm not going to get all the colors off. I'm going to just go pale with some water. I'm washing my brush, pale with some water. It's not runny water, on the edges of these darker tones. On the edges of these darker tones. So they're not going to dry. Okay, so we've got very soft, almost if when you start and softening the edges of these clouds and the color is very dark, it means that you need to wash your brush, you need to dry your brush on the paper towel, and then just carry on. So we just need to have some soft edges. Okay, that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, nice and soft. Now I can take a little bit of a breather. So I hope you're still watching and not painting yet. I'm going to introduce a little bit more of that darker color back. So it's nice and soft and a little bit runny. So I'll go for some damp strokes. If my brushes, my strokes are runny, so they want to, it feels like they're going to run down, means I need to keep dabbing on my paper towel and keep lifting that runniness. For example, that one run down, but it looks quite impressive, quite like that one. So I might just keep it in there. But I think I'll need a tiny bit more darker color, maybe somewhere here in the corner. So I'm not copying it exactly as it is in the picture, but I'm improvising and trying to get some darker colors and some lighter colors. Actually, this is running a bit too much now for me. Maybe I can go over it, but it's still wet. Okay, I'm gonna come back with it while it's still damp. If it would have been a dry surface, it could be a complete mess very quickly. Okay, so I can only paint if the surface is still damp. Okay, that's quite nice. I quite like bringing some of these strokes in. And now the bottom of the paper, the bottom of my sky, where we're close to the horizon, I'm going to leave some of my pale areas of white if I can. And I'm going to put some smaller strokes, almost like little waves of strokes. You can't quite see them. Maybe I'll just make them a tiny bit more darker here. Okay, maybe it's a bit too dark. So I'm doing some smaller, sweeping little strokes. I want you to really make a good big mess in here. I can even paint over part of this tree here. Some sort of waves. My main mission, and I would like you to make your mission here for the sky, is to go as bold as you can, as strong as you can, and experience that boldness of strong blue here. So what I've done, again, a quick recap. Big strokes of dark blue, somewhere here, somewhere here. And then very quickly with damp brush, I soften the edges of all those dark shapes. Trying to make the paint not to run too much. If it runs, we dab in the brush on a paper towel. Oh, the paper towel, I haven't seen my paper towel, but you could see. And we are constantly making sure that our brush allows to bring some light, maybe some water. So we have got a bit of light coming on the sky. I'm just interested in something darker and lighter. It doesn't have to be exactly as on a picture or on my example here. I just want you to put something dark and be able to soften it very, very quickly. Okay, this is your first stage, everybody. So what we're going to do next, I'm going to swap the brush from a mop brush to a large flat synthetic brush because I would like to use it for the water. So I'm going to use the same color. I'm going to use it for the water. So all of that sea color is going to go for the same. Again, feel free just to watch me first, and then you will have the time to do this. Now it's going to be much darker, so I think I'm going to go for my ultramarine and a small amount of emerald green. Okay, where's my ultramarine? I'm constantly aware that when I'm mixing my colors, I might get it not the same color as I've mixed and kind of what I might want. So I always will test it out before I'll go for that. So a little bit of green and ultramarine I think would be nice. Then I can just introduce some fresh ultramarine as well. Okay, I think that would be a good combination. So quite a dark color. It's quite a reasonably large area, so I've tested it and now realize I haven't got enough. So I'm going to top it up again. I'm going to paint it in all the area together the same. Okay, but I have to do it quick because what I'd like to do once I painted the whole section, I want to have a light area which I'll use a brush just to lift some of the color, and I'll introduce some extra darker color. So if I paint it too slow or not enough water on my brush, it will dry too quickly and I wouldn't be able to do it. So again, just top up while I've been talking. Maybe I haven't got enough moisture there. So I'm painting all of this area quite quickly. Okay, I've got a patch, a greasy patch here somehow. Okay, I'm already running out of my paint, so this is going to be a darker corner, so I can just dip into my ultramarine and just go with that. Okay, very quick. What I can do with the shoreline, if I'm not sure where it's going to be finishing, tiny bit of emerald green, I'll leave it a little bit uneven. I can do a more straight line for the top, but I can make my shoreline a little bit uneven. Okay, the edge of it. Okay, I've done that part all together. I'm going to wash my brush, dry my brush on the paper towel, and I'm going to do a couple of strokes, lifting some of the color. Wash my brush, dry my brush on the paper towel, lifting a little bit of color. So just a little bit of paler tone somewhere here. wash my brush, dry my brush. I'm going to collect some of the moisture collecting, some of the paint collecting on the bottom here. I don't want it to be runny. At the same time, I'll give that a little bit of a paler section. I've got a blob of light here. I want it to be more even. Okay, that's good. And I'm going to go for strong ultramarine now. Maybe even indigo there. So not indigo, azure. I'm just going to put some strokes of extra dark blue. Beautiful, most beautiful strong blue here. Some of these lines might be here as well. I think I might just introduce some darker color when it's all dries. But something like that is nice and bold in color. And what I'll do, I'll just lift some of the color which keeps collecting at the bottom of my shoreline. I keep dabbing it on my paper towel to remove that extra moisture. So I haven't done another 100 of strokes. I try to keep it as bold and fresh without over mingling my strokes. Okay, now it's your turn, everybody. Right, so I'm going to come back to my mop squirrel brush. I'm going to add same colors while we've got them on our palette. Right here in the foreground for the shoreline, we've got this nice shadow in here. So I'm not going to do anything different to what we've done before. I'm just going to use similar colors, maybe a tiny bit more emerald green to what I'm seeing on my palette here. And with the brush, I'm going to use some scooping kind of strokes. Somewhere here, roughly somewhere here. A bit more here, a bit more there. Okay, they're reflecting. I'll turn my board in a moment so you can see what's happening. Okay, there. I'm going to put a darker, bigger, darker, tiny bit more concentrated paint all the way from the top here, right here. Maybe just drag it even across. Very free, very spontaneous. Okay. That's right there. Couple of strokes. Don't worry, they're not too dark. We can top them up later on. Couple of quick strokes, please, everybody. So what I'll do now, I'll look at some of the warmer colors which are on our painting, and let's just mix them together. So I need to double check that my palette has a clean area as well. There's no blue colors coming through there. Maybe I'll put my tissue here so you can see where it is. Okay, that's a little bit better set up for you to see. So I'm going to use my flat brush again just to sample some of the colors. I'm going to go for some ochre. I'm just going to make sure it's clean. Okay, so some ochre. I'm looking at some of the colors on the horizon and the mountains. I'm looking at some of the parts of the sand there. I can also see there's some violet. If you don't have violet, that's not violet, you can mix it by using a pinky red, or maybe a crimson, a alizarin crimson, or ruby, kind of pinky, not orangey type of red, with some blue. Otherwise, I've got a violet. Okay, that's a pale violet next to it. Let's see what's going to happen if I'll mix the two together. A little bit of violet, a little bit of ochre. That would be quite a nice color. And I will also need an indigo. So indigo is our dark blue, like a blacky blue. If you don't have it, just use any of your blues, one of the darker blues with some black. Okay, that's would be quite a nice color as well. And I think if we mix that with violet, that would be good as well. Indigo and violet together. So those are 3 color combinations. Ochre, violet, those kind of 2 individual colors. Those are ochre and violet together. Okay, and that's indigo, and that's indigo and violet. Because violet on its own could be just too strong in color, but when it is mixed with ochre, when it's mixed with indigo, just looks a little bit more appropriate for what we'll need to do. And another color we see on the shore here is a little bit of red. So let's try which red we might want to use. I think if I were to go for crimson, the pinky red, I think I might be on the winner here. Let me just clean it here. Okay, so that might be my crimson. So it looks quite strong, but I'm not going to use it on its own unless there will be some of it, maybe just mixing a tiny bit together. But I'm mainly going to use it with small amount of ochre. That's a color. So if I've got ochre and crimson together, and then I have fresh ochre next to it, those are type of color combinations we can see. So crimson or pinky red, yeah. And then we have crimson and ochre. And then we've got just a layer of ochre, layer of mixture of crimson and ochre. So once we identify these colors, it's easier for us to move between them. They don't have to be in exactly the same order, but we roughly know where they are in our palette. We roughly know how to mix them, how to move from one to another. And that would be brilliant. Another color combination we have is the violet and some crimson together. You can see it's a bit more in the foreground. So we're not adding any extra colors. We're just adding an extra color combination. So I have my fresh crimson, but it's quite diluted crimson there. Okay, so diluted crimson, that's a stronger pigment, that's a diluted one. And if I mix it with some violet, I'll have that purpley, lilac-y type of color. That's quite nice. Or I can make it a little bit stronger. Mixing together when they will be in front of us on the foreground.
Julia, can you use permanent rose?
So this is just light crimson or diluted crimson, and that again plus violet.
Julia,
Hello?
can you use permanent rose?
Of course you can, yes. If it looks pinky red to you rather than orangey red, then go for it, yeah?
Okay,
Ignore the titles. Just go for the look.
Okay.
Okay, doesn't matter if they're slightly more purpley or slightly more red, doesn't matter. Dark or lighter, doesn't matter. Just go for a feel if it's a little bit more into the pink side, or the purples. To be honest, you don't have to have any purples. You can just use any of the blues with that pinky red, and you'll be fine. What we can also see on our picture here is some turquoisey colors. Now we can mix our turquoisey colors how we were doing with the sky. Azure with some emerald green, but we also have already the blue here, and we also have our ochre here, and that's what's more likely going to happen. They're going to spontaneously merge and mix together. So instead of introducing an extra color, I just want to mix ochre, and then the turquoisey color we've got. So in a way, that's a combination of we have on the painting when the ochres come close together. Colors just merging together. So the art has been dipping in and out from that kind of range of colors, and how they mix together will give us extra colors. So blue, if I'll put azure, or it's cobalt blue sometimes, or it's brilliant blue, or all sorts of titles for it. Ochre, and that will be blue and ochre together. Right, so the next stage, what we'll do, I'll just show you a little mingle of all of these colors before we start painting them on actual final piece. How to work a little bit more free without worrying too much. So I'm going to have some of the lighter colors first. So I'm going to have a little bit of ochre. So I'm just going to place it almost as if I'm painting a bit of the shore. I'm going to put a little bit of crimson mixed with it, or that pinky red. So I'm not going for any extra colors, only the ones we've been using here. I'm just going to mingle them a little bit more here, a little bit more there, a bit more kind of doing those big stones and there. Okay, it's a little reflecting here again. Let's put some crimson, a little bit more violet together. Okay, just see how they go. If there is a bit of blue there. So it's almost directly dipping into the brush. Yeah, I'm just looking at those color combinations, how that will start mixing with my ochre, where's that's going to happen. So when you'll be looking at the painting, when you'll start working with it, if it doesn't come out exactly as in a picture, it doesn't matter. All I'm interested in is bringing those colors these colors are here, we can then add the dark violet mixed with indigo, or just pure indigo. Okay, combination of those. So I'm going to go for some indigo. I've got some violet next to it as well, mixed with it. And that's where some of the sharper strokes will come in. Some of them will stay almost dry, but some of them will come in quite soft because some of the area is going to be still wet. Play with some strokes, creating them some texture. Okay, you can see better like this. So all I'd like you to do now is to use some of your spare paper and maybe just play with those colors as I just done. Maybe put some lighter colors first, see how they will mingle together, and then put some indigo and violet on top. Some of the, to create some of the textures for the beach here. Okay, let's give that one a few minutes to try. So I'll go again for my squirrel brush now, and I'll start, actually maybe not a squirrel brush, maybe I'll go for a medium round brush first, because I'm going to start with the horizon and my mountain at the back. Now what we have there, we have some ochre, and looks like we've got some indigo and violet for the darkness of the mountain in there. So I'm going to do it very bold, very strong in one go. So I'll load my brush with some ochre first. I'm going to have quite a bit of water there, but I also don't want it to dry too quickly. Actually, I'm going to be quick because it's only a narrow space, so it will be okay. But you can have two brushes on the go. If you want to load one brush with ochre and another one with indigo and violet, that might help you. The ochre is not going to dry too quickly. So this is what I'll do. I'll paint all of this area. I'll paint all of that mountain space, trying to make sure it's really soft and runny, so it's not going to dry very quickly. So I'm introducing extra moisture there, so it's not going to be dry too quickly. I'm washing my brush. I'm going for indigo. It's actually already here on my palette, just double checking it's the right color here. And I'm going to start with the tops of my mountain. Okay, if the paint will run low, that's absolutely fine, but it's not going to go any higher because that part of the sky is all dry. I can identify my peaks of the mountains or the hills or the island or whatever that is. And then I'm going to be a little bit more spontaneously putting some little marks along the side, maybe some a little bit more lower. Okay, maybe stretch that color a little bit more flatter out. If it starts running like mine is, that's quite nice. And in some areas it looks like what the artist did, just smudged it a little bit more. I'll add a bit more ochre here. So I'm not using much water, hardly any water, mainly strong pigment. So I'm just smudging some of that area, so it just gives me extra darkness in there. But I think I'm going to keep the other sections quite runny. It's nice and effective there. Maybe not, just lift some of that. That's quite nice. So I've got my mountains ready. Okay, let's give you a moment to do that one now. Right, so for the top part of the shore, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use some ochre, but also on the bottom here, I'm going to introduce a little bit more crimson. Okay, and on the top here, I'll introduce a tiny bit of blue. and then I'll go with my indigo violet color. Okay, so I'm going to keep my small brush for my dark colors. So that's loaded and ready. And I'm going to use my flat brush or any other brushes you want to use for the lighter colors. So here is my ochre. And I'll start with that. Nice and strong. Don't dilute the ochre so it's very, very pale. Now, when we'll start painting now the shoreline, we've got some gorgeous white rocks here. So we're going to try to preserve some fresh pale color, not fresh pale color, fresh white if we can. So I'm going to stick mainly to the border and I'll work in the whites later on. Okay, so I'm going to go for strong color only. So again, just watch me first. So somewhere here, close to the water, so I can just work those semi-ovally shapes, maybe bringing it a little bit more further lower. I'm going to top up my paint, so it's going to be quite runny. So it's not going to be too dry because I want to mingle some color with it. Okay, so I'm again borderline with the water and something here. So the edges could be dry, but in the middle, I want my ochre to stay quite strong and wet. And I'm going to mix my ochre with crimson. And there is a nice patch of that pinky orangey color. It's come out a little bit stronger than I wanted, but that's okay. I'll just soften it with and bring it a little bit more across. Just a tiny bit more water. See where else I might want to put it. And I think I can see some of that similar crimson somewhere here. So I'll just put it there for the moment. Okay, something there. And this corner have the right hand side corner has some blue. So if I'll dip my brush in one of my blues, doesn't matter which, I'm just going to mix it tiny bit with my ochre there. And the rest is going to be the smaller brush, which is already loaded with some indigo and violet. Nice and strong, making sure if it's a bit runny, just dab it on your paper towel so it's not runny. And we can work a little bit more into the shoreline. We can even work a little bit more into the water, but most importantly, part of them, the stones here, almost with a dry brush, working on this damp surface. We'll work here close to the tree, but we can always come back to it because we haven't painted the tree yet. If I'm topping up the paint, I don't even add water unless if you do have to, just use a very, very small amount and just work how those strokes, tiny bit more water, how those strokes will start influencing, yeah, how it's smudging where it's still staying quite strong. Okay, so be creative with those strokes. And while I'm still in this area, I'm going to add some of the darker strokes for the water. Just going to drag a few lines, some a bit thinner, some a little bit wider, just to show the surface here. It also gives me an opportunity to touch up the actual border of the water and the beach here. Okay, so that's area done. Let's give you time to try. So for the bottom part of the painting, I'm going to introduce a little bit of ochre in the corner, on the right bottom corner. Might be still tiny bit of blue, might need to travel a little bit more further to get that turquoisey color. And then the rest will be pinky violet color. And then I'll work with the indigo. Now, we could have done this blue now, but it doesn't matter if it's dry. But we can do what we can do. We can increase some of the darkness of it if we wanted to. So reasonably quick, but the strokes need to be bigger. So I'm going to change the size of my brush to the squirrel brush, the mop brush. Or if you haven't got one, just to any other large size brush. So let's start again with ochre. And this time I might not need to go for fresh ochre, but maybe ochre and a little bit of crimson. By the time I just added a small amount of it, it's not a huge difference to ochre. It just made it a tiny bit more dark, a little bit more intensive. So that might be my corner there. And then if I'll go for one of my blues, maybe one of the azure, they mix together. I can even mix it on a palette to have that turquoisey color. Okay, so it's somewhere there. Okay, you can't see it well, it's reflecting again. Okay, and then I'm going to introduce a little bit more stronger blue in this corner again. Maybe leave some of that pale blue, but I'm going to work into some of those nice, exciting strokes. Maybe make some of them of my own, into my own texture. And then I'll work with crimson and violet, some paler washes there, maybe some stronger violet. Still reasonably diluted, but a bit more stronger in color. So a bit tricky to hold it and paint at the same time. Okay, and I'm going to wash my brush. Just going to use a little bit more runnier, just water really, softening some of the edges, and other edges could stay quite strong. And then I'll still go for my strong indigo color, indigo and violet. Okay, so you can see it better. I'll start with some smaller strokes with not much water on the brush. Okay, some of those strokes. Try to vary them in how they're cluttered. Maybe even introduce some here. So I'm just having a feel for maybe some of those stones, how some of the shadows might be created, maybe some gaps. If something stays runny, something stays a bit more sharp, that's all good. The variety is good. So I'm looking for some smaller strokes first because I want to use a bigger brush, do some larger ones in a moment. So my small brush, I wouldn't be able to do all my dark strokes with it. Maybe something here. And then I'm gonna go for my larger brush. I need to have much more stronger pigment. A little bit more indigo here. As my paper is gently dry and it's no longer reflecting. Okay, some more indigo, and I want to have some really nice strokes, really bold strokes across. Look at them. Okay, nice and fresh. Don't be scared of making mistakes with them. Just be bold. Keep topping up the color because you've got quite a lot of moisture in this area, and so we'll keep diluting the paint. So that's why I keep dipping into my watercolors more. Another stroke. Maybe a little bit more violet in one area. Maybe another area a bit more indigo. So the colors are slightly changing. There's some extra. That's an extra bonus as well. I'm quite happy with that one as well. Some of the areas are not dark enough. Maybe I'll just can go over some of it gently while it's still damp. Big areas, so not just the same thickness of the strokes. These ones looks a bit similar. I just make them a little bit more combined together. Nice, beautiful shadow. Maybe this could go a tiny bit more darker here as well. So I haven't done. If some of my colors, let's say this corner is drying a bit too pale, I can add stronger color to it, because now in contrast, the blue, maybe some fresher pink in that area. So if it's settled in, you lost some of it, we can reintroduce it gently. Okay, I'm quite happy to leave the rest as it is. There we go. That's nice and strong. Okay. Well, that's drying in the strange shape. I might have to readjust it gently there. Or if I'm picking up the board because it's reflecting for you, and some of the paint starts running, so I just need to catch it on time. If you, let's say, over darken the area while it's still wet, what you can do, you can wash the brush, dry it immediately, and just gently lift the color again. Wash it, dry it on a paper towel, and just lift it again. Wash it, dry it. It has to be that repeating process, otherwise you'll be just rubbing in the pigment further into the paper and you wouldn't be able to lift it. I think that's quite nice. I think I might just add something here because it just looks a little heavier than expected. Wash, dry, lift. Dry. Some very nice strong Mediterranean light is slowly happening in our piece. I've got last 3 steps. We need to do tiny bit of darkness, very, very pale darkness in the middle of the white section here. We need to do our green tree on the bottom here on the right hand side, and then we need to do the silhouette of our leaves. So the section on the white part of the stones of the beach is very easy. You can just pick up any colors on our palette. If they're pale blue, pale gray, pale pinky, green, anything goes. And we'll just do some of those overly, semi-overly strokes, maybe some wider ones. I'm making them extra pale, so they're not going to be strong and overpowering. Okay, can't see them probably as much. Okay, so they're just here. Can introduce a tiny bit of pale pinky strokes as well. Very, very gentle, trying to preserve our fresh area, the light area as much as we can. That strong red color here, so I'm just going to put a little stroke with a bit of extra red here. Right, so that's one is all good. Maybe just observe it, maybe just soften that little edge. for my liking. Okay. If I want to do tiny bit of paler strokes here as well, I can, but again, just be careful not to overdo it. More draw with a brush than introduce too much extra color. Okay, let's do that one. Let's give you a moment to do that. And then let's do the tree on the corner here. That's easy. We'll just use some ochre and we'll just use a little bit of indigo. Okay, or a bit of emerald green or a bit of both really. So we've got some stronger green showing. Okay, so all I'm going to do, I'm going to use a flat small brush. Just going to put a few scoops of color, tiny bit more paler color. Okay, so it just all kind of comes in here. So I'll do it on one color first, and I'm going to go into my dark, again, indigo here, hardly any water. And I'll just do some strokes. Okay, no water, maybe just even dry my brush on the tissue here. And a few more darker strokes, especially on the bottom here, just to get it a bit more landed. Now I'm painting over the masking tape, so it looks a little bit odd shaped, but when I'll take the masking tape off, that will be nice and good. Okay, the tree's ready. So for practice of my shadows of the branches, I'm going to use a flat brush. I've got a smaller flat brush and I've got a larger flat brush. Flat, big one especially will be good because otherwise you'll end up with too many details. I'll use mainly indigo. Well, occasionally dab into some violet as well. If I'll go for black, maybe just go for a bit of Payne's grey, but black on its own will be too boring because you're going to lose that boldness of the colors behind it. So I'm going to start with a flat brush. I'm going to look for the blocks, the shapes of the groups of the leaves. What I keep doing on the palette, I keep adding more water because I want to keep the color strong. So it looks almost black, but at the same time I need to have quite a lot of moisture, yeah, so it's quite reasonably runny, otherwise we'll be drying way too quickly. So I'll look for strokes. So for example, I'm going to hold my brush, my hand is above my brush, yeah, so I'm not painting like this. It's almost lying flat, yeah, on the surface. So that's how I'm holding my brush, so I can do some of the flatter strokes, some of the dry brushing strokes even. I'm going to do them a little bit more diagonally. That's why I need to have extra more water. So I'm going to have too many dry brush strokes. Can I place them tiny bit more, change slightly the diagonal? Yeah, how some of the leaves might be spreading. Okay, so it's that type of movement I'm interested in. Because if you just paint it as normal, you can still do it, but you'll have very dry strokes, sorry, very solid strokes. Loads of moisture might be running. This could be quite nice as well, but try, if you can, try sideways. I think that is the way forward. Just gives you much more spontaneous marks rather than very precise ones. So we'll look at the body of those shadows first. And then we can maybe use a flat brush for extra details, or for the branches, so we can just drag some of the branches out and just extend them, or where they might be. So I'm just improvising here, okay? So, and then feel free to improvise on your actual painting as well. I'm more interested into the feel for it rather than copying identical shapes. Okay, we just want to have a feel of the tree, the darkness of the tree coming down, yeah, from above our heads. That's what we want. If you'll end up with something a little bit more paler and a little bit more darker, that's even better. However, the darker point of the branches are going to stay probably close to the edge of the whole group below, and also way kind of at the top. So somewhere roughly in the middle, we could have some lighter colors, lighter tones across there. Okay, so that's where I made in slightly darker tones. So they all work as a group. I'm not painting individual ones. Okay, maybe it's a group here, a group there, but they also read as a big silhouette in there together. So I've just shown you there, but I'm going to go straight away into the actual painting. So I strongly recommend you practice. Maybe do it on a spare piece of paper alongside of me while I'm doing the actual piece, okay? So then you're not feeling rushed to do it. Right, let's swap the boards. So again, I'm going to start with my, oops, let me adjust the screen, sorry. Okay, that's better. Let's move this one a little across so you can see my palette. So again, I'm going to load my brush with more paint, a little bit of violet, but mainly indigo. I can just about see some of my pencil marks for the branches, but I will still start with the big blocks of the leaves. So I'm holding my brush at the top and I'm going to start placing some of these marks. Looking at the group of them, that's all nice and solid here. There's a medium-sized group of the branches coming across here. If there will be some dry brushing going on, that would be wonderful, but don't worry if you need a bit more time to practice it first. Loading my brush a bit more. That dry brushness allows us to show that the wind shows that the silhouettes of the leaves are quite they're all moving. They're not just posing to us. Yeah, I've got that lovely fleeting moment catching, yeah, of that moment of the heat of the sun, the strengths of the tones and the shadows, that fresh air from the sea. Okay, maybe somewhere a bit more stronger. This side, tiny bit more water so it will flow better. Where it's going to be a bit lower, maybe I'll deliberately make this area a tiny bit more lower. If I need to go over my green tree, I have, because it's filled, my green tree is going a bit too high. And I want my silhouette of my tree above us being a bit lower. And not gonna keep everything solid in this top right corner. I'll have something tiny bit more paler there, maybe even gaps, and that dry brushing allows me to do it. Right, I'm happy with it so far. So I just use a smaller brush to do some branches. Again, I'm gonna just follow what my painting already has. I'm gonna try not to, if some of the branches might not be appropriate for my piece here because of how many leaves I've done, how many blocks of them, groups of leaves I've done. That's fine. Just gonna make them a little bit crossing, maybe overlapping, slightly wider, slightly narrower. Okay, where that branch is going, somewhere there. piece of little branches to it. Okay, if you're not sure, keep practicing it on a spray paper before you introduce the actual strokes to the painting. Okay, maybe even smudge it with a finger. Maybe something across here. Maybe some smaller ones. Okay, this looks a little bit too parallel, so I think I might introduce another branch. Again, work with your painting, what works best. Okay, that's looking better. Maybe another branch. There is one branch going down, but I think if I'll do that, it's going to be a bit too much, so I'll keep it more diagonally. I think I might. Branch could have a bit more extra support somewhere here. So I'm not painting the whole piece. It's more of an impression. Okay, these strokes look too similar, so maybe I'll just break them down a little. And I think I'm done here. I'm gonna let it dry. See how those silhouettes are standing out. If I need to touch anything else up on the silhouettes of the tree branches, I will, but so far they're looking good. Right, this corner is tiny bit drying, so I can just touch it up maybe with a bit of extra darkness somewhere here. Let's see how that dries as well. And maybe a tiny bit my hair. So it's still not solid black. It's something dark, but it's, we can still see the color underneath of it. You can still see part of the sky of it behind there. I'll adjust, see if I can adjust the camera so you can see it better. But otherwise, my painting is finished. Okay, so I have got that change of light and dark, and again dark and what's extra dark. Yeah, so within all the silhouette of darker branches, it looks slightly darker in some areas. And at this stage, if you wanted to touch up anything on the water or any other darker strokes, I think it's all good for me here. So thank you very much for today.